My name is Gina, and at 29 years old, I never imagined a simple text message could shatter my entire world. I was driving home from my night shift at the hospital when my phone buzzed. The message from my dad read, "We've decided you should step away from the family business for now. Don't come to Sunday dinner." My hands trembled so violently I nearly crashed into the car ahead. 15 years of dedication to our family company, dismissed in a cold, cryptic text. 3 words kept echoing in my mind: we've decided. Who exactly was we? Before we dive deeper into how my own family orchestrated my downfall, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's experienced family betrayal? Hit that like button if you believe family should always have your back, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of survival and redemption. Trust me, what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Henderson Construction wasn't just a business, it was our family's kingdom, built from my grandfather's calloused hands into a $50 million empire. I'd been groomed for this world since I was 14, spending every summer following my father Donald around construction sites, learning to read blueprints before I could properly read Shakespeare. Even after earning my nursing degree, I couldn't abandon the family legacy. I worked part-time at the company, balancing healing patients with managing projects, believing I was building something meaningful alongside the people I loved most. Our family structure seemed unshakable from the outside. My father Donald, at 58, ruled as CEO with an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove. He was the kind of man who could negotiate million-dollar deals over breakfast and still make it to my high school volleyball games. My mother Joyce, 56, served as CFO, her silence in board meetings often mistaken for submission when it was actually calculation. She had a way of supporting my father's decisions that made you forget she had graduated summa cum laude from Wharton. Then there was Brett, my 35-year-old brother, the crown prince who'd been promised the throne since birth. As VP of operations, he strutted through the office like he already owned it, his jealousy of my close relationship with Dad barely concealed behind forced smiles. Brett had always resented how easily I understood the business, how naturally the numbers came to me, how the workers respected me despite my part-time status. He'd make snide comments about my little nursing hobby whenever I solved problems he'd been struggling with for weeks. My younger sister Kayla, 26, had joined just 6 months ago as marketing director, fresh from her MBA and full of ideas that sounded innovative but felt hollow. She'd waltzed in with her perfectly blown-out hair and designer suits, immediately claiming the corner office I'd been promised 3 years ago. Dad had said we needed to modernize our image, and apparently, that meant pushing aside those of us who'd built the foundation for someone who knew more about Instagram than installation. The first crack in our family facade appeared last Tuesday. I'd been reviewing quarterly reports for Dad when I noticed discrepancies in the accounts. $3 million had vanished into a supplier company I'd never heard of, Shaw Industrial Solutions. My stomach dropped as I traced the authorization signatures. The payments were approved at the executive level, but something felt wrong. The timing, the amounts, the way they were buried in subcontractor expenses, it all screamed of embezzlement. I'd printed everything out and walked into Dad's office, finding Brett already there, lounging in the leather chair across from Dad's desk like he owned the place. His face had gone pale as death when I spread the documents across Dad's mahogany desk, explaining my findings with the precision of a prosecutor. Dad's expression had been unreadable, his fingers steepled under his chin as he absorbed every word. Brett kept interrupting, calling my analysis paranoid and insulting to our trusted partners, but his voice cracked on the word trusted. After my presentation, Dad had simply nodded and said he'd look into it. Brett had stormed out, shoulder-checking me on his way past. That was Thursday. The text came Saturday night. Now, sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot, I called Dad's cell. Straight to voicemail. I tried his office line, knowing he often worked weekends. Nothing. My mother's phone rang once before her clipped voice answered. "Gina, dear," she said, her tone devoid of its usual warmth. "Listen to your father. He knows what's best." The line went dead before I could respond. My hand shook as I shifted into drive. If they wanted to shut me out through text messages and cold phone calls, they'd have to look me in the eye. I deserved that much after everything I'd sacrificed for this family. The 20-minute drive to Henderson Construction's headquarters felt like hours. Each red light gave my mind time to race through possibilities. Had Brett convinced them I was wrong? Was there an explanation for those transfers I'd missed? Or was something far more sinister happening within the walls of the empire I'd helped build? The building loomed before me, its glass and steel facade reflecting the setting sun like a mirror of broken dreams. This place had been my second home, where I'd spent countless nights working alongside my father, believing we were creating something that would last generations. Now it felt like a fortress built to keep me out. I pulled into my designated parking spot, the one with my name still painted on it, though I wondered for how long. Whatever was waiting for me inside, I knew my life was about to change forever. The family empire I'd devoted my life to was about to show its true face, and I had a sinking feeling I wouldn't like what I discovered. The automatic doors that had welcomed me thousands of times now felt like a barrier as I approached Henderson Construction's entrance. Frank, our security guard who'd worked here for 20 years and had watched me grow up, couldn't meet my eyes. His weathered face, usually bright with a smile and a joke about the weather, was drawn tight with discomfort. "I'm sorry, Miss Gina," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your keycard's been deactivated. I've been instructed not to let you in." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Brett in my father's corner office, gesturing animatedly as he spoke on the phone. His usual swagger was amplified, as if he'd already claimed his victory. My blood boiled watching him pace behind the desk where I'd sat with Dad countless times, planning projects and discussing the company's future. A future that apparently no longer included me. "Oh, Gina. What are you doing here?" Kayla's voice dripped with false surprise as she emerged from the building, her Louis Vuitton bag swinging from her manicured arm. She wore that same saccharine smile she'd perfected for client meetings, the one that never quite reached her calculating eyes. "I thought Dad told you to take some time off. You really should listen to him, you know. Family knows best." She glided past me toward her white Mercedes, throwing a look back that was pure triumph. I waited until Kayla's car disappeared around the corner before circling to the building's rear entrance. Lois, Dad's executive assistant for 15 years, was smoking her afternoon cigarette by the loading dock. She'd been like an aunt to me, sneaking me candy during long summer days at the office and covering for me when I'd sneak out of boring meetings as a teenager. "Lois," I called softly. She jumped, nearly dropping her cigarette, then quickly glanced around before motioning me over. "Child, you shouldn't be here," she whispered, but she was already holding the door open. "Something bad is happening. Your daddy's been in meetings with that lawyer Malcolm Shaw all week. Brett and Kayla too. They made me sign papers saying I couldn't talk about what I've overheard, but..." She pressed her keycard into my hand. "Conference room 3. They think it's soundproof, but the vent carries voices. Be careful, honey. Whatever's happening, it's ugly." I slipped through the familiar hallways, my heart pounding with each step. The building felt different in its weekend emptiness, shadows stretching longer, every sound amplified. Conference room 3 was in the executive wing, its frosted glass doors revealing moving shadows inside. I ducked into the supply closet adjacent to it, pressing my ear against the ventilation grate Lois had mentioned. Malcolm Shaw's voice came through first, smooth and oily like expensive poison. "The transfers are complete. The offshore accounts are untraceable. Even if she talks, the evidence trail leads back to her computer. Kayla did excellent work with the digital footprints." My blood turned to ice. They weren't investigating my findings, they were covering them up and framing me for it. She was getting too close, Brett's voice was tight with stress. "I told you we should have pushed her out months ago. She's too smart, too ethical. She actually believes all that integrity bullshit Dad used to preach before he wised up." There was a bitter laugh I recognized as my father's, though it sounded hollow, defeated. Your father's right about one thing, my mother's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. Gina would destroy everything if she found out. She'd go to the authorities without hesitation. Family loyalty means nothing to her compared to her precious principles. The room spun around me as I processed their words. My own parents, the people who'd raised me to value honesty above all else, were actively conspiring against me. Tears burned my eyes, but I forced myself to keep listening. Malcolm was speaking again. The embezzlement charges will stick. We've backdated documents showing she's been siphoning funds for 2 years. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Classic pattern. The forensic accountants will eat it up. And if she tries to fight it? Kayla asked, her voice eager like a student seeking praise. Then we release the emails, Malcolm replied. The ones showing her mental instability, her jealousy of her siblings' success, her desperate attempts to gain her father's attention through increasingly erratic behavior. I've had a psychiatrist ready to testify about narcissistic personality disorder with delusional tendencies. My hand knocked against a mop bucket in my shock, sending it clattering across the closet floor. The conversation in the conference room stopped abruptly. Footsteps approached the door. I tried to back away, but Brett yanked it open, his face contorting from surprise to rage in seconds. Always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, he snarled, grabbing my arm hard enough to leave bruises. Just like when we were kids. Always had to be Daddy's perfect little girl, didn't you? The others filed out of the conference room, their faces a mixture of shock and cold calculation. My father looked older than I'd ever seen him, his shoulders sagging under invisible weight. Mom stood beside Malcolm Shaw, and something in their positioning, the casual intimacy of it, made my stomach turn. Kayla smirked from behind them, already typing on her phone, probably documenting this for their mental instability file. Let her go, my father said quietly, and Brett released me with a shove that sent me stumbling. Gina, you were never supposed to find out like this. We were trying to protect you, to give you a clean exit. Take the offer. Walk away. Start fresh somewhere else. It's what's best for everyone. His words were measured, rehearsed, like he was reading from one of Malcolm's scripts. Protect me? My voice came out strangled. You're framing me for embezzlement. You're destroying my reputation, my career, everything I've worked for. I looked at each of them, searching for any sign of the family I thought I knew. How much did you steal? How long has this been going on? Malcolm stepped forward, his expensive suit and predatory smile making him look like a well-dressed shark. Those are dangerous questions, Miss Henderson. The kind that could lead to unfortunate consequences. Your family is offering you a gift. The chance to disappear quietly, to start over. I suggest you take it. The alternative is federal prison for crimes you'll be thoroughly documented as committing. Your choice. Security arrived then, 2 men I didn't recognize, hired muscle rather than the familiar faces I'd grown up around. They escorted me out, Brett following to ensure I left. At the door, he leaned close, his breath hot against my ear. Should have taken the hint, sister. Now you'll learn what happens when you threaten what's mine. Dad always loved you best, but love doesn't mean much when millions are at stake. Sweet dreams tonight. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. I stumbled to my car, my mind reeling from the betrayal. 15 years of dedication, of believing in family above all else, shattered in a supply closet. But as I sat in my car, engine running, I made a decision. They thought they knew me, thought I'd crumble or run. They were wrong. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one. My hand steady now with purpose, I drove away from Henderson Construction. I had work to do. The extent of my family's betrayal became clear when I reached my townhouse. My key slid into the lock but wouldn't turn. I tried again, thinking it was stuck, but the mechanism had been changed. Through the window, I could see my furniture was gone, replaced by white sheets covering what looked like staging furniture. My neighbor, Ruth, an elderly woman who'd watched me move in 5 years ago, shuffled over in her house slippers. "Oh honey, I'm so sorry about your emergency move," she said, patting my arm. "The moving company came this morning with documentation showing you'd authorized them. Such nice young men, very efficient. They said you'd gotten a job overseas and needed everything in storage immediately. I thought it was strange you didn't say goodbye, but they had all the proper paperwork." Her kind eyes searched mine with concern. My phone buzzed with a notification from my bank. "Account frozen. Assets under investigation. Contact customer service for more information." I sank onto Ruth's porch step, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. Another notification, email from Henderson Construction's HR department. "Dear Ms. Henderson, effective immediately, your employment has been terminated due to suspected financial misconduct. A full investigation is underway. Do not attempt to contact any company personnel or enter company premises. Legal action will follow. Can I use your phone?" I asked Ruth, my voice hollow. Mine was clearly being monitored, every digital move tracked. She nodded, ushering me inside her doily-covered living room that smelled of lavender and cats. I dialed Melanie's number from memory. She answered on the second ring. "Thank God," Melanie whispered immediately. "Are you okay? They came in this morning, seized your computer, your files. They're saying you stole $3 million. The forensic team is going through everything." "Gina, I know this is insane. I've worked beside you for 5 years. This isn't you." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Mel, I need your help," I said quickly. "Brett's the one who stole the money. I found evidence Thursday night. That's why they're doing this." I could hear her sharp intake of breath. "Listen, I don't have much time. Can you access the backup server? The one we set up for disaster recovery?" "Already ahead of you," she said, her voice dropping even lower. I pulled everything Friday when things started feeling weird. Brett's been doctoring the books for 2 years, maybe longer. Shell companies, fake invoices, the works. I've got it all on a drive. But Gina, there's more. Your mom's signatures are all over these transactions. She's not just complicit, she's been facilitating." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My mother, the woman who'd taught me to balance my first ledger, who'd drilled financial ethics into me since childhood, was actively embezzling from her own company. "Where can we meet?" I asked, but Melanie was already speaking to someone else. "I have to go. Security's here. They know I'm talking to you. I'll leave the drive with Carlos at the coffee shop on 5th. Trust no one else." The line went dead. Through Ruth's lace curtains, I watched a black sedan pull up outside. 2 men in suits emerged, checking their phones. Time to leave. Ruth, bless her heart, didn't ask questions when I requested to borrow her car. She just handed me the keys to her ancient Buick and $20 from her cookie jar. "Whatever's happening, dear, you fight it. I've watched you these 5 years. You're good people. Don't let them break you." The coffee shop was closed when I arrived, but Carlos was waiting in the alley, nervously smoking. "Melanie said you'd come," he said, pressing a flash drive into my palm. "She also said to tell you they fired her an hour ago. Security escorted her out. They're cleaning house of anyone loyal to you." His eyes darted around nervously. "I'm probably next. Good luck, Gina." I found a seedy motel on the outskirts of town that accepted cash and didn't ask questions. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and broken dreams, fitting perfectly with my new reality. I booted up an old laptop I'd bought from a pawn shop, praying Melanie's drive would reveal enough to fight back. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. 2 years of systematic theft, money flowing through a complex web of shell companies, all leading back to Shaw Industrial Solutions. Malcolm Shaw wasn't just their lawyer, he was their partner. But the most damning discovery was a folder labeled JH Private. Joyce Henderson, my mother. The files inside showed a 5-year affair with Malcolm, complete with emails planning their future together once they'd extracted enough money from the company. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Princess." Uncle Barry's voice was strained. "I'm calling from a burner phone. Listen carefully. Your dad's protecting Brett because Joyce threatened divorce if he didn't. She'll take half of everything, including the company. But there's more. Malcolm has something on her, something from before she met your father. She's trapped, playing his game to protect some secret. Your dad's just trying to keep the family together." "By destroying me?" I asked bitterly. "Some family. I'm not defending them," Barry said quickly. "Just explaining. Donald's convinced himself that sacrificing you will save the others. Brett's promised to pay back everything once he's in charge. Kayla's been feeding information to Malcolm for months, thinking she's securing her future. They're all compromised, Gina. You're the only clean one left, which is why you had to go." A notification popped up on my burner phone. Kayla had posted on Facebook, "So sad when family betrays trust. Some people's greed knows no bounds. Praying for those affected by the actions of someone we thought we knew." The comments were already flowing, family, friends and distant relatives offering support, condemning the unnamed thief. My reputation was being murdered in real time. By evening, the extent of my isolation was complete. Bank accounts frozen, home gone, job lost, family turned enemy. Even casual acquaintances were distancing themselves, poisoned by carefully crafted rumors. I sat on the threadbare motel bedspread, Melanie's flash drive my only weapon against an empire built on lies. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. They'd taken everything they thought mattered, but they'd forgotten something crucial. They'd trained me too well. I understood their business, their methods, their weaknesses. And now, with nothing left to lose, I was their worst nightmare, someone who knew where all the bodies were buried and no reason to keep their secrets. Tomorrow, I would begin fighting back. Tonight, I mourned the family I'd lost, the illusions shattered. But grieving would have to wait. Survival came first, and then, if I was very careful and very smart, justice. Morning came with new bruises and a determination forged in the furnace of betrayal. I'd spent the night poring over Melanie's files, mapping the web of corruption my family had woven. The motel's flickering fluorescent light had become my war room's overhead lamp, the stained walls my evidence board. I needed allies, and I knew exactly where to find the first one. Dominic Rivera had been Henderson Construction's best project manager until Brett fired him 13 months ago. The official reason was performance issues, but everyone knew the truth. Dominic had questioned discrepancies in Brett's budget reports once too often. I found him at his new job, managing a small construction firm across town. He agreed to meet at a diner outside the city limits, away from prying eyes. "I knew this day would come," Dominic said, sliding into the booth across from me. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes still held that sharp intelligence Brett had feared. "When they fired me, I started keeping records. Call it paranoia or intuition, but I knew Brett Henderson would eventually hang himself with his own rope." He pushed a thick envelope across the table. "Copies of everything I could salvage before they locked me out. Shell companies, inflated contracts, kickbacks. Your brother's been running a shadow operation for years." "How deep does it go?" I asked, though Melanie's files had already painted a grim picture. Dominic's laugh was bitter. "Deep enough to drown in. But here's what you don't know. Malcolm Shaw isn't just your family's lawyer. He's connected to the Bratva, the Russian mob. They've been using Henderson Construction to launder money through those infrastructure projects. Your brother thought he was smart, skimming from the mob's operations. Malcolm's been playing everyone." The coffee in my cup suddenly tasted like acid. If the Russian mob was involved, this wasn't just about embezzlement anymore. This was about survival. "We need more than documents," I said. We need proof of the connection, something that can't be explained away or blamed on me. Dominic nodded. I still have contacts inside. Good people who've been watching, waiting. Frank, the security guard, he's been documenting unusual visitors, license plates. There's a junior accountant, Ashley, who's been quietly copying files. They're scared, but they're angrier. Brett's management style creates enemies. We can use that. We spent 3 hours building our strategy. Dominic would coordinate with the inside contacts while I worked on documenting the money trail. We agreed to meet again in 2 days, but as I left the diner, I noticed a familiar car in the parking lot. My blood froze. It was Brett's Porsche, and he wasn't alone. I ducked behind a delivery truck as Brett emerged with 2 men I didn't recognize. They were built like refrigerators, with the kind of faces that suggested violence was their primary language. Russian, by their looks. They were showing Brett photos on a phone, and even from a distance, I could see his face pale. Whatever leverage he thought he had, it was evaporating. That evening, back in my motel room, I got an unexpected call. Frank's gruff voice was strained. Miss Gina, I shouldn't be calling, but you deserve to know. Your mother came to the office tonight. She was crying, real tears, not the crocodile kind. She met with Malcolm in the parking garage. I got close enough to hear some of it. He's got something on her from before she married your dad. Something that could destroy more than just her reputation. She's trapped, honey. Fighting for her life, not just money. What kind of secret? I asked, but Frank was already whispering urgently. Can't talk more. They're watching everyone who was loyal to you. But I left something in your old office. 3rd drawer, false bottom. Your dad had me install it years ago for sensitive documents. Check it if you can get in. It might help you understand. The line went dead. The next morning brought violence to my doorstep. I was returning from buying supplies when 2 men cornered me in the motel parking lot. They moved with practiced efficiency, cutting off my escape routes. You've been making inquiries, the taller one said in accented English. This is unwise. Our business with your family is private. Stop now, or next time we won't be so polite. I tried to run, but the shorter one grabbed my arm, twisting it until I cried out. Your brother owes us money. Significant money. If you interfere with our collection methods, you become part of the debt. Understand? He released me with a shove that sent me sprawling onto the asphalt. Final warning. They left me bruised and shaking, but also more determined. If the mob was threatening me, it meant I was getting close to something they didn't want exposed. That evening, I got a text from Dominic. They got to me. Hospital. Southwest Medical. Come quick. I found him in the emergency room, face swollen beyond recognition, ribs taped. They wanted me to stop helping you, he wheezed through split lips. Said next time would be permanent. I'm sorry, Gina. I've got kids. I can't. I squeezed his hand, understanding. The price of justice was getting too high for those with something to lose. But others stepped forward. Melanie, despite being fired, had reached out to her network. A forensic accountant named William, who'd always suspected something was off about Henderson's books. A private investigator named Rosa who specialized in financial crimes. Even a few clients who'd been overcharged and suspected kickbacks. My army was small but growing. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ashley, the junior accountant Dominic had mentioned, managed to copy Malcolm Shaw's personal files during a system update. What she found was a complex network of offshore accounts, coded communications, and most damning, recordings. Malcolm had been recording his conversations with my family for insurance. In one recording, dated 6 months ago, my mother's voice was clear. I don't care what we have to do. That girl will ruin everything. She's too much like her grandfather, too idealistic. If she won't take the hint and leave voluntarily, we'll make her. Malcolm's response was chilling. Framing her for embezzlement is just the beginning. If she persists, my associates have ways of handling problems permanently. Your husband needs to understand that. The recording confirmed what I'd feared. This wasn't just about money anymore. My family had signed my potential death warrant to protect their secrets. But it also gave me leverage. If I could get these recordings to the right authorities, it would blow everything wide open. That night, someone slipped an envelope under my motel door. Inside was a single photo, me, talking to Dominic at the diner, crosshairs drawn over my head in red marker. The message was clear. Time was running out. I needed to strike back before they struck first. The investigation phase was over. Now it was time for war. The photo with the crosshairs changed everything. I couldn't win this alone, playing by rules my family had already shredded. It was time to bring in the professionals. Through a college friend who'd gone into federal law enforcement, I reached out to Agent Sarah Walsh of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Sarah had mentioned at our reunion that they were always interested in construction companies with suspicious cash flows. Now I understood why. We met at a federal building downtown, passing through multiple security checkpoints that made me feel both safer and more aware of the danger I was in. Sarah's office was sparse, efficient, all business. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes, her poker face revealing nothing until I finished. "We've been monitoring Henderson Construction for 18 months, she said finally, dropping the bombshell with casual professionalism. "Your report just confirms what we suspected. Your brother's amateur money laundering caught the attention of some very dangerous people. The BRAPA doesn't usually work with family companies, but Malcolm Shaw provided the connection. We've been waiting for an inside source. Congratulations, you're it. So you knew my family was criminal and did nothing?" I asked, anger flaring. Sarah held up a hand. "We knew someone was dirty. We didn't know how deep it went or who was involved. Your evidence fills the gaps. But we need more. We need recordings, admissions, something that will hold up in court. Are you willing to wear a wire?" The idea of facing my family again, pretending to grovel for forgiveness while recording their crimes, made my stomach churn. But the alternative was living in fear forever, watching over my shoulder for Russian enforcers or framed evidence to surface. What do I need to do? Sarah smiled for the first time. Be yourself. The prodigal daughter returning home, begging for forgiveness. Their arrogance will be their downfall. They'll want to gloat, to explain how smart they were. Let them. We'll be listening to every word. 2 days later, wired with state-of-the-art recording equipment that looked like a simple pendant necklace, I stood outside my childhood home. The Georgian mansion looked the same, but felt different, like a mausoleum housing dead relationships. I'd texted my father that morning, a simple message, "I'm sorry. Can we talk? I just want my family back." He'd responded within minutes, eager to accept my surrender. "Come home, princess. We'll work this out." The princess endearment he'd used since childhood now felt like mockery. I rang the doorbell I'd rushed through thousands of times, waiting like a stranger. My mother answered, her perfectly composed face showing cracks of strain. "Gina," she said simply, stepping aside. The foyer still smelled of her favorite orchids, but underlying it was something else. Fear, maybe. Or guilt finally fermenting into something tangible. They were all gathered in the living room like a tribunal. Dad in his leather chair, Brett sprawled on the couch with false casualness, Kayla perched on the arm of a chair, and Malcolm Shaw standing by the fireplace like he owned the place. Maybe he did, in every way that mattered. "I'm sorry," I began, letting tears fall. They were real enough, mourning the family I'd thought I had. "I was wrong to question you. I see that now. I want to come home. I want my place in the family back." The words tasted like poison, but I sold them with every fiber of my being. Brett laughed, cruel and triumphant. "Look at the golden girl now. Not so high and mighty anymore, are you? Do you have any idea what you almost cost us with your meddling? He stood, pacing like a predator who'd cornered his prey. 3 years of planning, of careful construction, almost ruined because you couldn't mind your own business. Brett, enough, my father said, but his heart wasn't in the scolding. He looked at me with something between pity and disappointment. Gina, you have to understand. The construction industry has changed. The old ways, the honest ways, they don't work anymore. We had to adapt or die. Brett showed us how to survive. By stealing? I asked, making my voice small, broken. By working with criminals? By being smart, Malcolm interjected smoothly. Your brother recognized opportunities where others saw only risk. The Russian partners provided capital when banks wouldn't lend. Creative accounting kept regulators happy. Everyone benefited until you started digging where you shouldn't. Kayla couldn't resist adding her voice to the victory lap. You were always so naive, Gina. Thinking hard work and honesty would be enough. Look where it got you. Meanwhile, I aligned myself with the winners. In 6 months, I've secured my future better than you did in 15 years. But the FBI, I ventured, playing scared. If they investigate, they won't find anything, Brett boasted. Everything leads back to you. Years of small transactions from your account, documents with your digital signature, emails from your computer. Even if you went to them, who would they believe? The established businessman or the disgraced daughter with mental health issues? My mother finally spoke, her voice hollow. It didn't have to be this way, Gina. If you'd just looked the other way, none of this would have happened. But you're too much like your grandfather, too rigid in your morality. The world doesn't work in black and white anymore. I want to understand, I said, leaning forward, knowing the wire was capturing everything. How did it start? How did we get here? Dad sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 58 years. 5 years ago, we were hemorrhaging money. Bad investments, market downturn, overexpansion. Brett came to me with a solution. Malcolm had connections, people who needed legitimate businesses to move money through. It was supposed to be temporary, just until we recovered. But the money was too good, Brett continued, warming to his story. Why struggle for 5% margins when we could make 20? The Russians were professional, discreet. As long as we hit our numbers, everyone was happy. Then you started noticing things, asking questions. We tried to ease you out gently, but you're like a dog with a bone. Malcolm moved closer, his presence menacing despite his expensive suit. Your family made a choice, Miss Henderson. Survival over principles. Evolution over extinction. Your interference threatened not just their freedom but their lives. The BRAPA doesn't accept resignation letters. Once you're in forever. What about you, Mom? I asked, needing to understand her role. How could you be part of this? For the first time, real emotion cracked her facade. Malcolm knows things about my past, about who I was before I met your father. Things that would destroy not just me but all of us. I did what I had to do to protect this family, even if that meant sacrificing one daughter to save the rest. Joyce, Malcolm warned, but she was already standing, wine glass trembling in her hand. No, she should know. 25 years ago, I was Marie Volkov, daughter of a Bratva lieutenant. I fled that life, changed my name, built a new identity. But you can't run from blood. When Malcolm found out, when he brought my cousin Victor into our business, I had no choice. Cooperate or watch everything burn. The room erupted. Brett shouting about operational security, Kayla frantically texting, presumably warning co-conspirators, Dad reaching for Mom as she collapsed back into her chair. Malcolm's face had gone cold, calculating the damage of this revelation. Enough, Malcolm commanded, his cultured voice dropping into something harder. Miss Henderson, your fishing expedition ends now. You want back in the family? Fine. But understand the terms. Complete silence, total cooperation, and you live comfortably in exile. Speak one word of what you've heard, and you'll join the others who thought they could challenge the Bratva. Others? I whispered, genuine fear creeping in. How many bodies have my family's business buried? Brett smiled coldly. Did you think you were the first to notice discrepancies? That project manager who had an accident 2 years ago? The safety inspector who disappeared? The journalist who decided to drop her investigation? You're swimming in deeper waters than you know, little sister. I understand, I said, standing on shaky legs that weren't entirely in act. I'll disappear. Just, please. Let me live. Smart girl, Malcolm approved. You have 48 hours to leave the state. We'll be watching. One wrong move, one contact with authorities, and well, your mother can tell you how the Bratva handles family disappointments. I stumbled from the house, the wire still recording as I sat in my car, hands shaking. Sarah's team had heard everything. The conspiracy, the murders, the Russian mob connection, my mother's hidden past. It was enough to bring them all down, but also enough to paint a target on my back that might never fade. My phone buzzed. Sarah's text was brief, outstanding work. Teams moving into position. Get to safe house immediately. But as I drove away from my childhood home for the last time, I knew the real counterattack was just beginning. They'd confessed to crimes that went far beyond embezzlement. Now the FBI had what they needed, and my family had no idea their empire was about to crumble from within. Dawn broke with the sound of sirens. From my position in the FBI safe house, I watched the live feed as dozens of federal agents swarmed Henderson Construction. The early morning raid was coordinated across multiple locations simultaneously: the office, our family home, Malcolm Shaw's law firm, and several properties connected to the Russian operations. The empire built on lies was crumbling in real time, and I had a front-row seat to the destruction. Brett's arrest was caught by news cameras he'd once courted for publicity. Still in his silk pajamas, he was dragged from his penthouse apartment, screaming about his rights and demanding his lawyer. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that Malcolm Shaw was being arrested at the same moment across town, caught trying to destroy documents in his office shredder. The FBI had moved faster than anyone anticipated, freezing accounts and seizing assets before anyone could run. Kayla's performance was Oscar-worthy. When agents arrived at her downtown loft, she collapsed in theatrical hysterics, claiming she had no idea what was happening, that she was just a victim caught in her family's web. But her cell phone, seized as evidence, told a different story. Months of texts with Malcolm, detailed spreadsheets of money movements, even selfies taken at meetings with Russian contacts. Her Instagram-perfect life was over, and no filter could hide the truth. The news hit the media like a tsunami. Construction empire built on blood money, screamed the headlines. Family business tied to Russian mob, multiple deaths under investigation. Local news stations ran continuous coverage, interviewing former employees who now felt safe to speak about the suspicious activities they'd witnessed. Dominic, recovered from his beating, gave a particularly damning interview about Brett's systematic theft and intimidation tactics. By noon, the FBI had uncovered the full scope of the operation. $15 million laundered over 5 years. 3 confirmed murders connected to the cover-up, with 2 more suspicious deaths being investigated. A network of shell companies stretching from our small city to offshore havens in Cyprus and the Cayman Islands. The forensic accountants were calling it one of the most sophisticated family-run criminal enterprises they'd ever seen. My father's arrest was the hardest to watch. Unlike Brett's rage or Kayla's theatrics, Donald Henderson walked out of his home with quiet dignity, looking every year of his age and then some. He saw the news cameras and, for just a moment, looked directly at one. I knew he was looking for me, perhaps hoping I was watching, perhaps wanting to convey something words couldn't express. Then he was in the car, driven away from the life he'd built and destroyed in equal measure. Mom's arrest was complicated by her past identity. The revelation that Joyce Henderson was actually Marie Volkov, connected by blood to the Bratva, sent shockwaves through our social circle. Federal agents had to coordinate with international law enforcement to understand the full implications. She was considered both a perpetrator and a victim, trapped between her past and the crimes she'd committed to hide it. The Russian connection moved swiftly once they realized the operation was compromised. Viktor Volkov, my mother's cousin and the main Bratva contact, disappeared before agents could reach him. Several mid-level operators were caught trying to flee the country, but the big fish had slipped away. Sarah warned me this meant I'd need protection for a long time. The Bratva had long memories and didn't forgive losses lightly. Within 72 hours, Henderson Construction was dead. Clients fled, projects halted, employees scattered to find new jobs before the taint of association stuck. The building I'd grown up in, where I'd learned to read blueprints and dream of building things that mattered, was wrapped in crime scene tape. Federal agents carried out box after box of evidence, each one another nail in my family's coffin. The investigation revealed the true genius of Malcolm Shaw's scheme. He'd positioned himself as the spider at the center of the web, playing my family's greed against their fear, my mother's past against her present. He'd recorded conversations for blackmail, created legal documents that protected him while exposing others, and built escape routes for every contingency except one, a family member with nothing left to lose. The money trail was staggering. Brett had skimmed nearly $2 million for personal use, funding his lifestyle of cars, boats, and mistresses. Kayla had taken less but spent more, her social media presence funded by blood money she'd helped launder. My parents had been more careful, their takings hidden in retirement accounts and property investments, preparing for a future that would never come. The trials were set to begin in 6 months, but the media trial was immediate and merciless. Every scandal, every whispered rumor about our family over the years was dragged into the light. Former friends gave exclusive interviews about warning signs they'd noticed. Business competitors spoke sanctimoniously about maintaining ethics in tough times. Our family name, once synonymous with quality construction and community leadership, became shorthand for greed and betrayal. Donald suffered a mild heart attack 3 days after his arrest. I was allowed to visit him in the prison hospital, my first time seeing family since the recording. He looked small in the hospital bed, orange jumpsuit replacing his usual suits. "I failed you," he said without preamble. "I failed all of us." I told myself I was protecting the family, but I was just protecting myself. The stupid thing is, I can't even remember when it stopped being about survival and became about greed. "Why didn't you come to me?" I asked, needing to understand. "When things got bad, why didn't you ask for help instead of turning to criminals?" His laugh was bitter. Pride. Stupid, destructive pride. I'd built this empire, and I couldn't admit it was failing. Brett offered a solution that let me keep my illusions. By the time I realized the cost, we were too deep. Every crime required 2 more to cover it. Every lie spawned 3 others. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that sacrificing you was noble, that I was protecting you from our sins. There was nothing more to say. The man who'd raised me to value integrity had betrayed every principle he'd taught. The family that had been my foundation had crumbled, leaving me standing alone in the wreckage. As I left the hospital, past the guards and cameras and curious onlookers, I realized that sometimes collapse is necessary for rebuilding. The Henderson Empire was dead, but maybe something better could grow from its ashes. 6 months had passed since the morning raids that ended my family's criminal empire. I stood in the break room of Mercy General Hospital, sipping coffee between rounds, my scrubs a far cry from the designer clothes I'd once worn to board meetings. But for the first time in years, I felt clean. The night shifts were long, the work exhausting, but every patient I helped heal felt like a small act of redemption, proof that Henderson hands could build up instead of tear down. The trials had been a media circus. Brett got 15 years federal time, his arrogance finally silenced by the weight of evidence. He'd tried to flip on everyone else for a reduced sentence, but the recordings were too damning. Kayla received 10 years, her social media facade cracking completely when the judge read her verdict. She'd sobbed about her ruined future, never once acknowledging the lives our family had ruined. Malcolm Shaw got 20 years and millions in restitution. The sophistication of his scheme, the bodies left in its wake, earned him no mercy from the court. My mother's case was the most complex. Marie Volkov, formerly Joyce Henderson, received 7 years with the possibility of early release for cooperation. She'd turned state's evidence against the Bratva connections, entering witness protection upon release. During her sentencing, she'd looked at me across the courtroom and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I wanted to forgive her, but trust, once shattered, doesn't rebuild easily. Maybe someday, but not yet. Dad got 12 years. At his sentencing, he'd stood and addressed the court, taking full responsibility for failing his family and community. "I built an empire on sand," he'd said, voice steady despite his tears. When it started to slip, I grabbed onto anything to save it, not realizing I was pulling everyone I loved into the quicksand with me. My daughter Gina is the only one who had the courage to do what was right. I'm proud of her, even as I'm ashamed of myself. After court one day, Uncle Barry had pulled me aside. "Your dad asks about you every time I visit. He knows you probably can't forgive him, but he hopes someday you might understand. He keeps a picture of you from your nursing graduation in his cell. Says it reminds him that at least one good thing came from all his failures." I'd nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Understanding and forgiving were different things. I was working on the first. The witness protection program had initially wanted to relocate me completely, give me a new identity far from Russian revenge. But I'd refused. This was my city, my home. I wouldn't let them take that too. Instead, I lived carefully, varied my routes, checked my surroundings. Agent Sarah checked in monthly, assuring me that Viktor Volkov seemed more interested in rebuilding his operations elsewhere than seeking revenge. Apparently, I'd become too high-profile a target, the risk outweighing the satisfaction. Still, I stayed vigilant. My new life was smaller but richer. Melanie had started her own accounting firm, specializing in helping small businesses stay legal and ethical. She'd hired Dominic as a consultant, and together they were building something honest. They'd offered me a position, but I'd found my calling in nursing. The money I'd saved over the years, the parts not frozen by investigation, let me live simply while serving others. It felt like penance and purpose combined. There were unexpected bright spots in the darkness. Frank, the old security guard, had testified about the intimidation and threats he'd witnessed, helping secure convictions. In return, I'd helped him find a job at the hospital, where his protective instincts served patients instead of criminals. Lois had retired early but sent cards occasionally, filled with gossip about former colleagues finding honest work and moving on. The good people who'd been trapped in our toxic empire were free now, building better lives. The most unexpected development was Connor Walsh, no relation to Sarah. He'd been the lead prosecutor on the case, brilliant and dedicated to justice. We'd met during trial prep, his careful questions drawing out details I'd buried. Somewhere between depositions and court dates, professional respect had grown into something more. He understood the weight of family betrayal, having prosecuted his own share of dynasty demolitions. He never pushed, never demanded more than I could give, content to let whatever we were building grow at its own pace. "You ready?" Connor asked now, appearing in the break room doorway. We were grabbing dinner after my shift, nothing fancy, just Thai food from a place that knew our orders by heart. 6 months ago, I'd been eating at 5-star restaurants on dirty money. Now I ate pad Thai with a man who'd helped put my family in prison, and somehow it tasted better. Honest food for an honest life. As we left the hospital together, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I looked older, certainly more tired, but also more real. The perfect Henderson princess was gone, replaced by someone who'd survived betrayal and chosen integrity over easy lies. It hadn't been the path I'd planned, but it was mine, earned with pain and truth. "You know," Connor said as we walked to his car, Sarah mentioned the FBI commendation finally went through. They want to honor you for your role in breaking up the organization. Public ceremony and everything. I shook my head immediately. No thanks. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because it was right, because staying silent would have made me complicit in their crimes. He smiled, understanding without question. That was the thing about Connor, about this new life. No hidden agendas, no family secrets, no empires built on blood. Just simple, clean connections between people who valued truth. It wasn't the life I'd planned at 29, but it was the life I'd chosen, and that made all the difference. The text that had shattered my world 7 months ago still lived in my phone, saved as a reminder. We've decided you should step away from the family business for now. Don't come to Sunday dinner. Those words had meant to dismiss me, to push me into shameful silence. Instead, they'd set me free. The family business was gone, Sunday dinners were held in federal prisons, and I was finally, fully myself. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover who you really are. My family's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but their cruelty had also revealed my strength. They'd tried to bury me in their lies, not realizing they were planting seeds of truth that would grow into their destruction. And from those ashes, I'd built a life worth living, one patient, one truth, one honest moment at a time. Family isn't about blood. It's about who stands by you when the truth comes out. My biological family had failed that test spectacularly, but I'd found a new tribe in unexpected places. Former colleagues who risked everything to help expose the truth. Federal agents who protected me when my blood relatives would have fed me to the wolves. A prosecutor who saw past the Henderson name to the person beneath. And patients who trusted me with their care, never knowing their nurse had once helped build an empire of lies. I still drive past the old Henderson construction building sometimes. It's being renovated now, turned into affordable housing by a company that actually cares about community over profit. It feels right, transformation instead of destruction. Brett would have hated it, which makes me smile every time. Our empire built on greed is gone, replaced by homes for people who need them. It's a better legacy than we deserved. The family empire built on lies had to fall, and I'm grateful I wasn't buried in its ruins. My father's text had told me to step away, and in the end, that dismissal was the greatest gift he ever gave me. Not because he meant it kindly, but because it forced me to see the truth we'd all been avoiding. Sometimes the most painful betrayals lead to the most necessary revelations. And sometimes, just sometimes, losing a toxic family is how you find your true home. Learning that integrity is lonely was hard, but discovering it's the only companion that never betrays you was worth every lost relationship, every threat, every sleepless night wondering if I'd survive to see justice done. I had been dismissed from a family built on crime, but I'd admitted myself to a life built on truth. And that, more than any family empire, was worth fighting for. What would you do if your own family betrayed everything they taught you to believe? If you discovered the people you trusted most were living double lives built on blood and lies? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? Share your experiences, because sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles makes all the difference. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of survival against all odds. And please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that choosing integrity, no matter how lonely the path, is always worth it. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to redemption. Remember, your true family consists of those who support your growth, not those who demand your silence. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and never let anyone dismiss your worth.